Here's a truth most people aren't ready to hear. Kindness, when given to the wrong person, isn't a virtue. It's a trap, and narcissists know exactly how to use it against you. They're not afraid of your compassion. They feed on it. They don't care about your feelings. They care about your silence, your patience, your willingness to keep bending, so they can keep controlling. But what happens when you stop? When you no longer explain, no longer try, no longer carry the weight of the entire relationship on your back? Everything changes. In this video, I'll expose a harsh truth shared by Keanu Reeves that almost no one dares to say out loud. Kindness cannot fix a toxic relationship, and the more you sacrifice, the more you lose yourself. But there is one moment, one decision, that can shatter their control completely. And if you're brave enough to take it, you'll never be manipulated again. Stay until the end, because what I'm about to reveal will change the way you see every relationship you've ever had. Some people are simply not worthy of your kindness. With a narcissist, the more you try to prove your love and patience, the more they push their limits. It's not because you're not good enough, not forgiving enough, or not understanding enough. It's because they don't see the world the way you do. You speak the language of sincerity to someone who only understands power. Think of a chess game. When you move a pawn forward as a gesture of goodwill, hoping your opponent will soften, they don't see it as an act of kindness. They see it as an opportunity to attack. Your moves are not analyzed through the lens of emotions, but through strategy. To them, concession is not a virtue. It's an open invitation to manipulate. So how do you break free from this cycle? The answer does not lie in changing them, but in changing how you respond. You don't need to be cruel, but you do need to be firm. You don't have to retaliate with hatred, but you must stop allowing them to mistake your kindness for weakness. When they throw out cutting remarks, you don't need to smile and brush it off. When they dismiss your feelings, you don't have to exhaust yourself explaining so they understand. When they violate your boundaries, you don't have to find excuses for them. Set limits, and more importantly, enforce them. A simple statement like, "I do not accept this kind of treatment," can be more powerful than 1,000 acts of forgiveness. You cannot control how they behave, but you can control how you react. Do not wait for the day they suddenly wake up and change. Do not stake your peace on something unpredictable. Remember, kindness does not mean enduring abuse, and love does not mean sacrificing yourself to maintain a toxic relationship. Some people only learn when they have no one left to manipulate. When you stop being their supply, they are forced to face themselves. And that is not your burden to bear. Your responsibility is to protect yourself, to live a life free from the psychological games of others. So let go of the illusion that kindness can change everything. Let your kindness be reserved for those who appreciate it, not those who exploit it. You deserve a life where kindness is not a weakness, but a true strength. When you try to be more understanding, more accommodating, they don't appreciate it, they exploit it. Not because they misunderstand your kindness, but because they understand it too well. They see it as an opportunity to control more, to demand more, and to push you further into submission. So if kindness is not the answer, what is? Clarity, strength, and a firm refusal to play by their rules. You must recognize that your worth is not measured by how much mistreatment you can endure. Standing up for yourself does not make you cruel. Setting boundaries does not make you heartless. A narcissist will try to convince you otherwise because their power relies on your compliance. They need you to feel guilty for protecting yourself. They want you to believe that maintaining peace is your responsibility. Because the moment you stop believing that, they lose control. And this is the most crucial shift. You do not need to explain yourself to them. You do not need to prove your worth. You do not need to convince them of your goodness. The only thing you need to do is deny them access to it. Because the harsh reality is this: kindness only holds value for those who recognize it, and a narcissist is not one of them. The next time you feel the urge to give in, to offer them another chance, to justify their behavior, ask yourself, are you being kind because it is the right thing to do, or because you are afraid of what will happen if you don't? Because if it's fear, then what you are dealing with is not kindness, it is fear. And fear is exactly what they prey on. The only way to break this cycle is not through cruelty or revenge, but through something even more powerful: indifference. Nothing confuses a narcissist more than realizing they no longer have control over you. One of the most dangerous misconceptions about narcissists is the belief that if we just keep the peace, avoid confrontation, tolerate, and endlessly endure, things will get better. That they will recognize our goodwill and reciprocate. That through kindness and understanding, we can change them. But the reality is the opposite. Concession does not earn their respect. It does not make them kinder, nor does it make them more reasonable. What it actually does is reinforce their belief that they have absolute control, that they can act however they please without facing consequences, that no matter what they do, you will stay, you will adjust, you will bend to their chaos, that your needs, your boundaries, and your dignity are secondary to their whims. And this is precisely what they want, because a narcissist does not seek balance in a relationship. They seek dominance. They do not care about fairness, mutual respect, or anything resembling equality. What they want is control, and that control is not maintained through brute force alone. It is reinforced through psychological manipulation. Think about what happens when you continuously prioritize peace over asserting yourself. Over time, the manipulator realizes that you are willing to shrink yourself to accommodate them. They learn that if they apply enough pressure, you will yield. If they dismiss your feelings, you will doubt yourself instead of doubting them. If they make you feel guilty, you will rush to appease them, even when the fault isn't yours. And once they understand this, why would they ever stop? What would compel them to suddenly start respecting you when they have no reason to? They won't change. Instead, their manipulation escalates. The more you concede, the more you are oppressed. The more you endure, the more you lose your own voice. And one day, you realize you've spent years walking on invisible shards, careful with every word, suppressing your own needs, all just to avoid another meaningless confrontation. But there is one thing you must understand. With a manipulator, there will never be true peace. Because to them, peace is not about mutual respect. It is merely the absence of resistance. And that is not peace, it is submission. It is the slow erosion of your identity until you no longer exist as yourself, but only as a tool for their benefit. So what is the solution? The solution is recognizing that your silence is not a strategy, it is surrender. That your patience is not a virtue, it is exploitation. That every time you give in instead of speaking up, you are not preventing a battle, you are prolonging it indefinitely. And this is when everything needs to change. You cannot negotiate with a manipulator through kindness. You cannot teach them to respect you by showing them how much you can endure. The only thing they understand, the only thing they respond to, is consequence. That means you must be willing to break the cycle. You must be strong enough to say, no, I will not accept this. And more importantly, you must mean it. You must be ready to walk away, not as a threat, not to make them change, but to reclaim your own worth. Because the truth is this: manipulators do not change for those who shrink themselves. They only change, or rather, they only adjust when they realize their old tactics no longer work. When they see their control slipping away. When they understand that the person they once easily manipulated has learned to stand firm. And the moment you stop playing by their rules, the moment you stop prioritizing their comfort over your own self-respect, that is the moment you take back your power. So ask yourself, are you maintaining peace, or are you feeding their control? Are you truly preventing conflict, or are you sacrificing yourself in the process? Because if the price of keeping them happy is losing yourself, then it was never real peace to begin with. The gravest mistake when dealing with a narcissist is believing that logic, fairness, or sincerity can change them. We think that if we explain clearly enough, if we express our pain the right way, they will understand, wake up, take responsibility, and change. But that is not just a false assumption, it is a dangerous trap. Narcissists do not operate within the same framework of morality, accountability, or even reality as the rest of us. You assume that if you tell them you are hurt, they will feel remorse. If you point out an injustice, they will acknowledge it. If you appeal to their better nature, they will respond with self-awareness. But the truth is, they do not think that way. What matters most to them is not truth, not fairness, not emotional connection. It is control. Control is maintained by distorting reality, shifting blame, and keeping you trapped in an endless loop of trying to fix a situation without realizing that the situation itself is the problem. This is why arguing with a narcissist never works. You present facts, they deny them. You express your emotions, they deflect. You try to resolve conflict, they turn the conflict back on you. The end result is always the same: frustration, self-doubt, and a sense of powerlessness. Because that is their game. And the moment you engage in it, you have already lost. A narcissist is not looking for understanding. They are looking to control your perception of reality. This is why every conversation with them leaves you feeling confused, drained, even guilty, as if you are the one at fault. They twist the narrative, omit key details, rewrite events to make themselves the victim or the hero, but never the one responsible. And if you dare to expose the truth, they will escalate. They will manipulate your mind, distort your memories, insist you are overreacting, or worse, turn the blame back on you. Because for them, the goal is never resolution, the goal is control. And this is where most people make a fatal mistake. They believe that if they can just find the right words, if they can be patient enough, if they can argue with enough reason, they will break through the narcissist's facade. They convince themselves that deep down, this person must understand the truth, must care about their feelings. But they do not. And the more you try, the more exhausted, manipulated, and detached from reality you become, failing to see what is really happening, that you are being pulled into a battle you can never win. So what must you do? You must stop playing the game. You must recognize that no amount of explaining, proving, or kindness will make a narcissist respect you. Because to them, respect does not come from fairness or mutual understanding. It comes from power. And the only thing they truly respond to is not words, but consequences. They do not care about your feelings. They only care about what they can and cannot do without facing repercussions. When a narcissist sees that you still have hope, that you are still trying to explain, that you are still waiting for change, they know they still have control over you. And that is why your approach must change entirely. No more trying to make them understand your point of view, because they will not, and they do not need to. No more seeking validation from them, because their opinion of you holds no real value. No more engaging in endless arguments that go nowhere, because you are not obligated to participate in a conversation that is not based on truth. And the moment you do this, the entire dynamic shifts. Because narcissists rely on your need for resolution. They thrive on your belief that if you just try hard enough, things will change. But the moment you stop seeking their approval, the moment you no longer need them to see things from your perspective, their power over you weakens. They can no longer manipulate you through guilt, through rage, or through the illusion of possible change. Does this mean they will stop? No. In fact, when a narcissist senses they are losing control, they often escalate. They may attack you with cruel words, provoke you into reacting, or even switch tactics entirely, suddenly playing the victim, pretending to be remorseful, promising to change. But do not be fooled. They are not truly sorry. They do not truly want to change. They just want to regain control. This is the most critical moment. This is where most people falter, slipping back into the old cycle, thinking, maybe this time it will be different. But it will not. The cycle will repeat as long as you allow it. The only way to break free is to stop engaging. Stop explaining. Stop seeking fairness. Stop giving them the benefit of the doubt. Because a narcissist does not change because you suffer enough. They change, or more accurately, they adapt, only when they have no other choice. So reclaim your power. Walk away, not to teach them a lesson, not to make them miss you, but because you finally understand that you deserve better. And when you do, you will realize something truly liberating. You were never the problem. You were simply the one who finally saw the truth. Narcissists thrive in environments where they can manipulate the emotions of others. This is why one of their most effective tactics is provocation, pushing you to your limits, twisting your words, and creating chaos just to pull you into their world. And once you step in, once you react, they win. Because at that moment, you are no longer thinking clearly. You are reacting emotionally. And that gives them the advantage. A hard truth to accept is this: your emotional reaction is their fuel. They don't see your anger, frustration, or sadness as signs of distress. They see them as proof of control. But once you recognize this, once you refuse to engage in their game, once you stop allowing them to influence your emotions, you take back your power. And that is when you finally become free. I used to believe that if I just explained myself clearly, if I was patient enough, if I could make them understand how I felt, things would be different. But no, that was an illusion, a carefully designed trap that kept me stuck for far too long. They don't need to understand. They don't need to listen. They need only one thing: my reaction. And the more I reacted, the more I lost. Because for them, this was never a conversation. It was a psychological chess game where I was always at a disadvantage. Every cruel remark, every subtle insult, every time they twisted the truth or dredged up the past, it was never accidental. It was a calculated move designed to wound, to make me lose control, to keep me playing a game where they made the rules. And I played that game, over and over. I tried to explain, to prove myself, to seek fairness in an argument that was never meant to have an end. But then I realized something. Fairness was never what they were looking for, and truth meant nothing to them. The only thing that mattered was whether they could manipulate my emotions. From that moment on, I changed my approach completely. I stopped trying to make them understand. I no longer needed them to acknowledge my worth. Their opinion of me no longer held weight. I refused to react the way they expected. I refused to be dragged into endless, meaningless battles. I chose to step back, not out of fear, but because I finally understood the rules of their game, and I refused to play. Do not mistake emotional detachment for indifference. I did not deny my feelings. I still felt anger, frustration, and pain. But instead of giving those emotions to someone who would only weaponize them against me, I kept them for myself. I chose to express them in a safe space, with people who genuinely cared. And then something remarkable happened. When I stopped reacting, they lost control. They didn't know what to do when their usual tactics no longer worked. If they insulted me, I simply smiled. If they dredged up the past, I didn't justify myself. If they provoked me, I didn't respond. They pushed harder, testing new strategies, silent treatment to induce guilt, feigned remorse to lure me back, explosive rage when I remained unmoved. But I saw through it all. I was no longer there to be controlled. I was no longer their puppet. And when they realized that, their power dissolved. A manipulator cannot control someone who refuses to play their game. And when you stop seeking validation from them, when you understand that your worth is not defined by the opinion of someone who thrives on control, that is when you reclaim your life. And then they test you. They wait for a moment of weakness, a tiny opening to strike. They reopen old wounds, hurl insults, fabricate lies, distort reality, all with a single purpose: to pull you back into their cycle. They don't need to win immediately. They just need a reaction, a sign that you are still susceptible, that with enough patience and precision, they can break you again. This is why true detachment is not just a mindset, it is discipline. It is understanding that silence is not weakness but strength, that walking away is not losing but regaining control, that refusing to engage is not surrender, but a declaration that you will not play a rigged game. When a manipulator realizes they can no longer provoke you, when they see that their hold over you has crumbled, they become desperate. Their tactics shift. Attacks turn into false remorse, victim playing, or even sudden acts of kindness. But do not be fooled, this is not real change. It is simply another form of control. Watch their actions, not their words. And when their actions remain cycles of manipulation, deceit, and self-interest, the only reasonable response is to walk away. You owe them nothing, not a reaction, not an explanation, not a place in your life. The only thing you truly owe yourself is peace. And peace comes when you refuse to play a game that was never fair to begin with. A manipulator's control is built on a single principle: keeping you in a state of uncertainty. The more they make you doubt yourself, the more power they have over your emotions, your actions, and even your perception of reality. That is why, if you want to reclaim your power, you must first reclaim your certainty about who you are, about your worth, and about what you will no longer tolerate. Think about how this plays out in real life. A manipulator does not need physical force to control you. They do it in far more insidious ways, by slowly chipping away at your confidence. A condescending remark about your intelligence today, a subtle joke at your expense tomorrow, a passive-aggressive complaint about your appearance, your work, or your value. At first, you might brush it off, but over time, those words accumulate, seeping into your subconscious. You start to doubt yourself, wonder if they might be right, question whether you are overreacting, and consider whether you should try harder to please them. This erosion of self-trust is no accident, it is deliberate. Because when you lose faith in yourself, you become easier to manipulate. The more you second-guess yourself, the more they control the narrative. That is why they use gaslighting, why they distort memories, why they deny things you know to be true, to make you feel like you can't trust your own mind. And once you stop trusting yourself, you start relying on them. And that is exactly what they want. But here's the truth. A manipulator's opinion of you means nothing. It holds no value unless you allow it to take root in your mind. The solution is not to convince them of your worth, but to become so unshakable that their words can no longer affect you. This requires a shift in mindset. Instead of constantly reacting to their criticism, manipulation, and distortion of the truth, you must take the strongest possible stance, affirming, without a doubt, that you alone have the right to define yourself. No more accepting their blame, no more allowing them to rewrite your story, no more expecting fairness in a game that was never fair to begin with. This is not arrogance, nor is it about becoming combative or trying to outmaneuver them in a battle of wits. Because the moment you engage in their game, you have already lost. They thrive in chaos, in emotional warfare, in the endless cycle of conflict and reconciliation, of blame and forgiveness, of cruelty and charm. The only true victory is to walk away from the game entirely. What does that mean? It means detaching yourself from their need for control. It means understanding that you do not owe them explanations, justifications, or the pursuit of their understanding. It means recognizing that your peace is worth infinitely more than their approval. And most importantly, it means deciding, deep within yourself, that you will no longer allow anyone to impose a distorted version of yourself upon you. True strength does not come from forcing a manipulator to see you differently, but from seeing yourself so clearly that their version of you becomes irrelevant. From reclaiming yourself so completely that their attempts to control you become nothing more than a faint echo in the background. But will they stop? Of course not. The moment they realize their usual tactics no longer work, they will escalate. They will strike harder, use harsher words, employ more insidious manipulations. They will press on every wound, poke at every weakness, do everything possible to pull you back under their control. And this is where many people make a mistake. They misinterpret the manipulator's desperation as sincerity. They think, if they're reacting this strongly, maybe it's because they truly care. But no, that is not care. That is the panic of someone losing their grip on power. A manipulator does not fight for you. They fight for the power they have over you. And the moment you truly understand this, you are free. Everything changes the moment you realize their old tactics no longer have an effect. Their manipulative words carry no weight. Their approval is no longer something you crave. And that is what they fear most. Because once you refuse to play their game, once you fully step into your authentic self, their power vanishes. They have nothing left to hold over you, nothing left to manipulate, nothing left to use against you. That is the moment you know you have reclaimed control over your life. But this is where many people stumble, because they have been conditioned to react, to explain, to seek fairness in an environment where fairness never existed. They keep playing the game, hoping that if they say the right words, use the right tone, or appeal to the manipulator's conscience, things will change. But reality always proves otherwise. Every time you react, every time you try to negotiate or justify yourself, you are only reinforcing their power. That is why the most powerful thing you can do is to disengage, not just physically, but psychologically. But letting go is not simply about ignoring them. It requires changing the way you perceive and respond to their behavior at its core. You must train yourself to recognize their tactics, systematic, predictable, and designed solely to provoke your emotions. The moment you stop fueling them with your reactions, their power starts to crumble. Of course, it's easier said than done, especially when you've spent years, maybe even decades, trapped in their cycle. Because here's a truth few acknowledge. Manipulators do not just create control, they create a psychological addiction. They condition you to crave their approval, to live in the constant highs and lows of emotional turmoil. That's why, even after the worst arguments, many people feel relieved when the manipulator temporarily acts kind or offers small tokens of affection. It's the cycle of reinforcement, abuse interspersed with occasional rewards, keeping you trapped in an endless loop. And to break free, you need a revolutionary shift. You must cut off the supply they rely on to maintain their power, not just by walking away, but by reclaiming the mental space they have occupied in your mind. That means no longer seeking closure, no longer waiting for an apology that will never come, no longer hoping they will awaken to the pain they've caused. Because the truth is, they never will, and holding on to that hope only keeps you bound. Instead, the real work lies in shifting your focus inward. Because the reason you endured their manipulation is not just because they were powerful, but because a part of you allowed it. This is not an easy truth to accept. It is always easier to place all the blame on them. But true strength comes from confronting this reality and deciding, from this moment forward, that you will never again let anyone else define your worth. There is a difficult truth to face. If I only blame the manipulator, I will remain trapped in the role of a victim, losing the opportunity to truly grow. The question is not why are they like this, but why did I allow this to continue for so long? When I dared to face that question honestly, without excuses, without avoidance, I began to see deeper truths. Maybe from childhood, I was taught that love must be earned, that I had to struggle to be worthy of it. Maybe it was the fear of abandonment that made me cling to a toxic relationship even when it was falling apart. Or perhaps deep down, I had accepted that my needs were always secondary, that sacrifice was inevitable. Whatever the reason, I realized that unraveling these beliefs was the first step toward my true freedom. Because when I understood what made me susceptible to a manipulator's control, I could finally begin to dismantle it. I learned to set boundaries, not just with them, but with myself. I learned to define my own worth instead of letting others dictate it. I learned to say no without guilt, to protect myself without feeling the need to explain. And here is the most important thing. When I truly healed, I no longer attracted or tolerated relationships like that. You don't need to lose yourself to save a relationship. The moment you stop explaining your worth to those who never valued it, you begin a new chapter, one of clarity, strength, and real freedom. Let Keanu Reeves' quiet wisdom remind us, peace comes not from changing them, but from protecting yourself. This isn't just a video, it's your turning point, your spark of motivation to break free. If this touched something deep inside you, share your story below. Like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss another powerful lesson. We'll see you in the next video, where your healing truly begins.